Hello, it's Joe. So today, the day I'm uploading this, should be the 16th of June 2019, which means it is also my 23rd birthday. And so to sort of celebrate this day, I thought I would do a fun little challenge in which I have to recommend 23 books that I've loved in my 23 years of living and do it in 23 minutes or less. Why am I doing this to myself? Not too sure, because I've done timed challenges in the past and they have not gone very well, but here we are. I actually did a trial run of this yesterday and I epically failed at it. Let us out. Wow, what a fail. What a fail. I think I had like 5 books left when the 23 minutes were up. And so that's kind of taught me that I need to be very fast because 1 minute per book is not a long time, apparently. I thought it was before I did the trial run yesterday, but no, it's not. So yeah, I have 23 books to recommend to you in hopefully less than 23 minutes. Some of them you will definitely be familiar with, some of them you might not be. These are just books that have meant a lot to me during the course of my life. So I guess without further ado, we should just jump right in and go for it. So 23 books for 23 years in 23 minutes or less. Let's go. I'm nervous, oh my god. 3, 2, 1, go. So this is Deltora Quest by Emily Rodda. This is set in the fantasy land of Deltora, which is being taken over by the evil Shadow Lord. The only thing that can stop the Shadow Lord from taking over is the magical Belt of Deltora. However, the Belt of Deltora is powered by 7 magical gemstones, and unfortunately these gemstones were stolen and spread across the land. So it's up to our hero Leaf to travel across Deltora, finding the stones and bringing them back to the capital to put back in the belt and to take back the land from the Shadow Lord. It's a children's book. I would say as long as the child is capable of reading that many pages, then I would definitely recommend it. Next up is Warriors or Warrior Cats by Erin Hunter. This follows a house cat named Rusty who discovers 4 wild clans of cats living in the forest at the back of his house, and he essentially wants to join them. And in these books there is quite a lot of surprising political intrigue considering it's a children's series. Although it is like an older children's series, it is quite thick. And so if you're into political intrigue and cats, then I would definitely recommend this. Next up we have a series of unfortunate events by Lemony Snicket. This is a children's mystery series. It's 13 books long, so it's a lot of commitment, so bear that in mind before you go into it. And it follows 3 siblings who are called the Baudelaires, and they are unfortunately orphaned at the beginning of the series when their parents die tragically in a fire. And the series basically follows them being passed around from relative to relative, trying to settle down. However, along the way, they are being chased by their distant cousin, I believe, Count Olaf, who essentially wants to steal the huge fortune that their parents left for them. Next up, we have one that I don't think anyone will have heard of. It's Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling. This follows a boy named Harry Potter who discovers he is a wizard. So he goes off to Hogwarts, which is a school of witchcraft and wizardry, and he discovers while there that his parents were actually murdered and not killed in a car crash, and a lot of shit goes down. There's 7 books, I'm sure we all know them. Next. Lion Boy by Zizu Koda. This is a children's series about a boy named Charlie Ashanti who can talk to cats. However, one day his parents go missing and he ends up on a circus ship with 6 lions trying to find them, and he can talk to the lions, and it gets good. Really, really good. It's a trilogy, I believe. Pretty sure it's a trilogy, and I would definitely recommend it. Next up we have The Inheritance Cycle, the first book being Eragon, and that's by Christopher Paolini. This follows a boy named Eragon who is a farm boy who's very poor, and one day he discovers a dragon egg that he wants to sell in order to get money for his family. However, the dragon's egg hatches and Eragon becomes a dragon rider and is thrust into this epic quest and destiny that he didn't really ask for, but he is part of now, and it's like 4 books long and it's really popular, so you probably know it. but if not, then here it is. It's about dragons, it's cool, let's go. Speaking of dragons, next we have The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. This follows a hobbit named Bilbo Baggins who goes on an adventure with some dwarves to rescue a forgotten treasure from an evil dragon, essentially, and I think it's really good. If you have tried reading the Lord of the Rings books and didn't like those, then I would recommend this one because it's much easier to digest. Something that isn't as easy to digest as that is the A Song of Ice and Fire series by George R.R. Martin, otherwise known as Game of Thrones. This is an epic fantasy series which I'm sure we've all heard of the TV show, and I think these books are absolutely amazing. We haven't got them all out yet, we are still waiting on 2 more, don't know when they're going to come out, but there's dragons, there's political intrigue, there's a lot of sex and violence and gore. So if you're into reading about those kinds of things, then I would definitely go for this one. Next up we have Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This follows 6 unlikely anti-heroes who go on a mission or quest or heist to try and break something out of a high security prison that no one's ever done before, and it's a very character driven book, so if you're into your characters and friendship dynamics and stuff like that, then I would definitely recommend this one. Next we have the His Dark Materials trilogy by Philip Pullman, the first book being The Golden Compass. This follows a girl named Lyra Belacqua who lives in a parallel world to our own where she has a demon, which is a physical manifestation of your spirit that lives on the outside of you, and everyone in her parallel world has a demon, and essentially she is the only girl who can read the Golden Compass or the alethiometer, and when her friend Roger goes missing at the beginning of this first book, she must use it to try and find him. Next up we have An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. This follows a girl named Laia whose family is tragically killed by the evil Martial Empire and her brother is actually kidnapped. So in order to save her brother, she must do what the rebellion says, and they tell her to pose as a slave in this huge martial encampment, and she's in a lot of danger there. But it also follows a boy named Elias who is part of the Martial Empire, but he's sort of questioning things, and it's about their paths sort of crossing along the way. Next up we have the Hunger Games trilogy by Suzanne Collins. This follows a girl named Katniss Everdeen who lives in a near-futuristic version of the United States of America called Panem, and it's split into 12 districts. Each year the 12 districts must submit 2 children, 1 boy and 1 girl, into the Hunger Games, where essentially all 24 tributes from the districts must fight to the death, and whoever wins gets a lot of money and stuff like that. And that's a really bad summary, but we've probably all heard of this. It has great characters, great plot, and I personally love it a lot. Next is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. This is a West African inspired fantasy series which some people describe as Black Panther meets Avatar The Last Airbender. Personally, I don't see the Avatar vibes from this book, however I do really like it. It's about a girl named Zaylee who is essentially trying to restore magic back to her people after it was stolen from them. Next up we have Scythe by Neil Shusterman. This is a dystopian, and it basically is set in the near future of our world where a lot of most diseases and things like that, and even death itself, has been cured. The only way you can die permanently is to be gleaned, which is basically being murdered, but legally, by a scythe whose job it is to kill people permanently. And this book follows 2 teens, I believe they are, Citra and Rowan, and they become apprentice scythes, and it's basically about their struggles in becoming full scythes, and it's really good. Don't give up on the dystopian genre, because I still love it, and this is a great example that it's still alive and thriving. Next up we have Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Rennie Edo Lodge. This is a non-fiction book essentially about the history of slavery and racism in Britain, and it's really informative, but if non-fiction is not your thing, then maybe it won't be for you. However, this is the first non-fiction book that I ever read, and personally I loved it. It was very informative, so if you're interested in non-fiction but not sure where to start, then go for this one. Next up is The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. This follows a man named Lala, and he is basically in Auschwitz, and he is the tattooer. So basically when the prisoners come into Auschwitz, he's the person who puts the tattoos on their arms, and while he's doing this he meets a woman and they fall in love, but it's about much more than the romance, and it's just an incredible story that I think you would really like, so yeah. Next up we have Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. This follows a woman named Eleanor Oliphant who is a bit of an oddball. She's had a lot of trauma in her life and she's a bit, well, very socially awkward until one day she meets a man named Raymond in her workplace, and Raymond sort of brings her out of her shell and becomes her friend, even though she doesn't really want him to be, and basically it's about her becoming who she was always meant to be, and basically her character arc in this book is everything. Her relationship with Raymond is everything. It's a platonic relationship, it does not get romantic, so if you're looking for, you know, platonic relationships that are developed really well, then I would definitely recommend picking this up. And also she lives in Edinburgh, so if you're familiar with Edinburgh then you will recognise a lot of places from this book. Next up we have They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. This is set in a near futuristic world like our own, where a company called Deathcast can predict the day that you're going to die, and so this follows two boys, Matteo and Rufus, who get a call one day and say, listen, this is the day that you're going to die. And so they meet through an app called the Last Friend app, and they spend the last day of their lives together, and they both die at the end. It's not a spoiler, it's in the title, it's an amazing book, it's gay, read it. Speaking of gay, we have Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertelli. This is about a boy named Simon who is gay and in the closet. However, he starts emailing another boy from his school who is anonymous but calls himself Blue, and they develop a sort of online relationship. However, this online relationship is discovered by someone else at the school who essentially blackmails Simon into doing things for them, and it's, I mean, that sounds like it's not a happy book, but this is like a really happy book, and if you're into like fluffy contemporaries and gay shit, then this is for you for sure. I really love it, the film's great. Yeah. Next up we have The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This follows a girl named Star who unfortunately is the sole witness to the murder of her childhood best friend Khalil by a police officer. It's essentially about like the Black Lives Matter movement and police brutality. There are a lot of important themes to this book. The family dynamics are everything. There is some strong friendships, there are some really great love to hate relationships, and the characters are great. I love this book a lot. It's one of my favourites of all time. The film is amazing and criminally underrated, so if you haven't seen the film, please do so, because it's so good. I cried for like the entire film, so yeah, and as you can hear, I'm losing my voice from this challenge, so moving on. We have To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. This follows a girl named Laura Jean who is half Korean, half white, and essentially she has written letters to her crushes over the years to get closure, but she doesn't actually send the letters, she just writes them for her own needs, until one day they actually do get sent out, and that causes a whole mess of trouble. And this is essentially a trilogy that follows Laura Jean's life and her relationships, and again, like The Hate You Give, it has a lot of really good family dynamics and friendship dynamics and relationship dynamics, and yeah, the characters are great. It's really light and fluffy and a really easy read, and I got completely sucked into Laura Jean's world, and I would love for you to do so also. Okay, I have 5 minutes and 2 books left. I've got this. Next up we have The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is an adult historical fiction about a woman named... what is her name? A woman named Monique who has just started working at a newspaper or a magazine, can't even remember which one, But essentially, huge Hollywood starlet Evelyn Hugo wants Monique to do an interview for her, and she doesn't know why, but she's obviously going to take that opportunity, so she goes and interviews her. And essentially it's about the life of Evelyn Hugo, including her 7 husbands. And Evelyn Hugo is an amazing character, probably the best character that I've ever read about, and I think you would really love her too. So if you haven't given in to the hype and read this book yet, then please, what are you waiting for? Do it. And last but not least, we have the last 5-star book that I read, which I read earlier this year, and it is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is a book written in verse, and it follows a girl named Xiomara who lives in Harlem, and she has grown up getting into quite a lot of fights. However, her passion is actually slam poetry, and one day she joins a slam poetry club at school, and it sort of changes everything for her because her family is not that accepting about her poetry, or rather her mother and father aren't. It's a really good book. It's written in verse, so it's a really quick read also, but it's absolutely amazing. It has amazing characters, the plot is great, and I highly encourage you to read it. Okay, I did that in less than 20 minutes, and yesterday it took me like 35 minutes to do all those books when I did the trial run. So I am very proud of myself for completing that challenge. Just to prove that I did do it, look how much time I have left. Yes. So I am really out of breath, and as you can probably hear, my throat is really hurting after that challenge, but I'm very excited that I completed it because I was really annoyed at myself yesterday for not completing it. So yeah, those are 23 books that I have loved in my 23 years in less than 23 minutes. I hope that you enjoyed this video. It was a lot of fun to make, although quite stressful. I hope that there are some books in that list that you hadn't heard of, or at least haven't read, and that you are now interested in. If not, then I just hope you enjoyed the video. I don't know, I'm just delirious at this point. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you feel like you like more of my videos, then subscribe below. My social media links will be down in the description if you want to check those out. But other than that, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having an amazing day. Goodbye.